My name is Beth Williams. I'm a yoga teacher and a personal trainer. And today's class is a Hatha Level 1 class. And so this class is going to be focused on back care. So it's a back care focus. So if you've had some back pain, maybe lumbar, low back pain, or even into the upper back, then this class is for you. So even if you haven't had back pain, I'm sure you'll feel great afterwards. So it's a good class for anyone who just wants to feel better overall in their body. So I wanted to talk today about the idea of transformation or change. And the philosophy of yoga is based on the radical idea that we can shift, that we can change our perspective, or we can change the course or the path of our life, if you will, because of the idea that we can change our habits and our thoughts, the way that we think, the way that we speak, and the way that we act or respond. And of course, ultimately, nothing is in our control, but there are certain things that definitely are in our control. And so to know that we can change the way that we perceive things, the way that we respond to what happens to us, it can be a very liberating and freeing experience. So we don't just settle for what is. The image that comes to mind when I think of transformation, and this is through yoga philosophy that I've kind of come up with this image again and again, is the image of a lotus flower. So many of you have seen the lotus flower perhaps on a pond, and you have your lily pads that are placed throughout the pond, and then you have this one flower that comes up with these beautiful petals that are quite gorgeous as they open to reveal the inside of the flower. The idea of the lotus flower that is so symbolic to transformation is that it blooms and it comes forth from dirt and muck and crap, if you will. I'm trying to mind my language here on YouTube. But it's from the muck and the mire that this beautiful flower can come into existence as it rears its bulbous head up towards the sun and then blooms. And so metaphorically or symbologically, we can look at it in reference to our own life, that we are transforming from our experience. And so often we may tend to only look at the positive aspects of our lives, the things that are pleasant to look at, so the flower, the lotus flower, but we have to remember where we came from and what trials and tribulations and pain and grief that we also came from, and that's what has made us into the resilient beings that we are today. That it's really only through the muck and the mire, the crap, we have to get through it in order to come out on the other side. So keeping that in mind so that we don't only look to what's positive, we have to remember our experiences, even if they have been difficult for us, and hopefully we don't repeat those experiences. So that's an idea that I wanted to put out there for you to think about, And in this class today, hopefully shifting some perspectives of how you perceive yourself and how you perceive pain in your body, and hopefully starting to shed a little bit of a different light on that, and shifting from being in pain to not totally being enraptured by that, but starting to move out of that pain cycle. And when we move out of the pain cycle, the mind becomes a little bit freer and we start to feel better. So, all right, let's bring our hands together at heart center and Anjali Mudra, just as a way to kind of center and start the practice today. So thumbs to the sternum, close your eyes, and start to focus in on your breathing. Taking a deep breath in through the nostrils, filling up the lungs completely, and exhaling completely out of the nostrils. We'll take a few more breaths like that, breathing through the nose and out of the nose. And you might even, as you're breathing here, really start to feel a sense of yourself, grounding down into your foundational points of your body, your feet, your legs, your hips, rooting down, much like a tree or a plant or a flower, roots down into the fecund, fertile soil. And we rise up with the inhalations, rising up through the crown of the head as if you could grow your spine, your torso a little longer, a little taller. And keeping that reciprocity of grounding, rooting down as you exhale, and lifting and lengthening up as you inhale. And then take a soft bow of your head in towards your heart. A bow of recognition, to recognize the self. And then releasing your hands, opening your eyes. Okay. So I have a couple of blocks. You'll want to grab a couple of blocks for your practice today, and I also have a blanket, so you might want to use a blanket for your seated postures, and perhaps even underneath your head. So for now, actually, let's see, let me move that towards the back end of the mat behind the head when you're lying down. You'll use it later, but for now, you're going to lower yourself down onto your back with the knees bent, all the way down to your back. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a back care focus. So we're going to be working with the muscles along the spinal column, the multifidi muscles and the erector spinae muscles. Those are the muscles that help to stabilize the spine and also to articulate movement of the spine. And when we're working with those muscles, we'll also be working with the front spine, the abdominals as well. Okay? So with the knees bent and the feet on the floor, the arms out alongside the body at a comfortable degree. Right now we're just going to work with hydrating the spine, like bringing a fresh drink of water to the low back, if you will. And you'll do that by just pressing your feet into your mat with about 30% of your effort. And notice when you do that how it moves your pelvis a little bit, and then release that effort, and notice how your pelvis settles back down to the earth. So we're just going to keep doing that, pulsing
And just holding that pulse of pushing your feet into the floor for a split second or a second, and then releasing that effort. And notice how as you keep doing that at your own pace, when you push your feet into the floor, it flattens the small of your back into the mat a little bit. And when you release, it gives you more of a curve in your low back. So you're just working with pressing the feet and then releasing that pressure. Pressing the feet, releasing that pressure. And we'll do that a couple more times. So this pulsing, this reverberation with your feet pressing down is hydrating your low back. Okay, good. So you can stop that effort and then reach your arms up to vertical so that the palms are facing one another. And you can imagine you're holding a beach ball between your hands. And so on your inhale, I'd like for you to press with your feet a little bit and then also reach the beach ball overhead. Like you're trying to touch the floor with the beach ball. And then on your exhale, release the pressure of your feet and take your arms back up to that vertical position. We'll do that again. Inhale, press with the feet, reach the arms overhead. Exhale, release the pressure of the feet, take the arms back to vertical. So we'll do that 3 more times, 3 more pulses. Just working with the range of motion through your shoulders that's available to you today. We're not trying to force the arms into a position that's uncomfortable, that feels painful through the shoulder joint. Okay. And then go ahead and release the hands back down and straighten your legs the length of your mat. You might notice that your lumbar curve increased when you straightened your legs. Some people say that their back hurts when their legs are straight. So hopefully that's not happening with you, and hopefully you can get through that while we're doing this together. So the arms can be wherever they feel most comfortable, and I'm going to have you inhale to point your feet like a ballerina. And on your exhale, I'd like for you to flex your feet and pull your toes back towards your shins. And we'll do that a few more times. Inhale, point the feet, point the toes. Exhale to flex the feet. And we're further hydrating the spine by doing this. So it's getting even more of a rocking action in your back. When you point your feet, it increases the curve in your low back. When you flex your feet, it flattens the curve in the small of the back. And this actually is hydrating even further up the spine compared to the first version we did where the knees were bent. Okay, and then what I want you to do is to point your right foot and flex your left foot. And then switch. Point your left foot and flex your right foot. And as you continue to do that, notice how your pelvis is hiking on one side, lifting on one side, and lowering on the other, kind of like you do when you're walking. And you can, be really gentle with this movement. It doesn't have to be a big, super huge movement. Try not to pronounce it. Just keep it gentle and flowing. And once you've evened out both sides, go ahead and just let the legs relax here. Good. Hopefully your back's feeling a little bit more juicy and hydrated. Now next up, I'd like for you to bring your right knee in towards you and grab the back of your right thigh by interlacing your fingers. And try not to pull your thigh bone all the way in towards your rib cage. So you don't want to pinch the front of the hip by pulling the leg in. Now on your inhalation, I'd like for you to press your thigh bone of your right leg into your hands. Create some isometric here. So resisting that effort. And then on your exhalation, I'd like for you to completely relax that effort, still keeping your fingers interlaced though. Okay, let's do that about 4 more times. Inhale, press your right thigh bone into your hands. Exhale to relax that effort. Inhale, press the thigh bone into the hands. Feeling your strength there. Exhale to release the effort. Inhale to press the thigh bone, creating some strength, some isometrics. Exhale to release the effort. And you'll do that 1 more time. Now, once you've completed your exhalation, I'd like for you to release that right foot to the floor and slowly straighten the right leg. So the right leg is just nice and straight. And it's okay if the leg wants to rotate out. You just notice some blood flow back into your right hip and your low back. And then we'll do that on the other side. So bringing the left knee in towards the left side of the chest, grab the back of the left thigh bone with interlaced fingers. And on your inhale, you're going to press your left thigh bone into the resistance of both of your hands. And notice how that creates more of a curve in your low back. That's a good thing. And then on the exhalation, just completely relax that effort. Again, inhale, press the thigh into the hands. And on your exhale, release the effort. Do that 3 more times. Letting the breath be long and rhythmic. Last time. This practice is also really good if you've been in the garden. So all you gardeners out there, have you in mind too. We'll release that left foot down and slowly straighten that left leg. Okay, we're going to come back into bent knees. Okay, with the knees bent, the feet about hip bone distance apart. So we're going to do this effort of bridging up 1 vertebra at a time on the inhale and unraveling the spine down 1 vertebra at a time on the exhale. So you can bring your arms out into a soft V shape. Press through your feet gently. On your inhale, pick your tailbone up. And pick your low back up, your mid back up, 1 vertebra at a time, your upper back, until you're as high as you can comfortably get. And then like a strand of pearls that you're lying down on the table, 1 pearl at a time, lowering the spine, 1 vertebra at a time, 1 pearl at a time. You'll notice your low belly muscles work more to try to get that low back to flatten once you lower the low back and the pelvis down. And we'll do that 4 more times. Inhale, pick up the pelvis, low back, mid back, and upper back. Going as slow as you need to go to really feel that articulation. And slowly lower down. Good, 3 more times. you're doing this, you're engaging your spinal muscles and your abdominal muscles. So we're getting that co-contraction of the front spine, the back spine, which is so healing for the back. It just gets those spinal muscles back online after being injured, even if the injury's been a while. Muscles can get sleepy when they've been injured and they don't fire when they're supposed to. So this helps to get those guys to fire in the order they're supposed to fire. I don't know about you, but I remember at one point when I hurt my back 20-something years ago, I was told to lay in bed. Well, they're finding now that that actually makes your back worse. So what they're finding now is that we can get you to keep moving and keep those muscles strong instead of letting them get weaker and atrophy. You have a much better chance of being pain-free. So that's the good news. That's why yoga is used for chronic back pain so much. Okay, we're going to take the feet out wide now so that they're as wide apart as the yoga mat. And the arms are going to come out into a T shape with the palms facing up. So we're just going to move the legs over to the right. So I know my right from my left here. So that I'm on the outer edge of the right foot and the inner edge of the left foot. And you can roll your head to the left. And the left side of the sacrum is lifted. The outer right hip is on the mat. And as you do this, can you start to feel that your left hip crest, hip point, that's the front of the pelvis, is kind of spiraling and rotating in. And the left thigh bone is also spiraling and rotating internally as the inner knee moves towards the floor. Good, and let's bring the head back to center, the hips back to center, the knees back to center. Just take a moment here. And then let the knees go over to the left. So you're on the outer edge of the left foot, the inner edge of the right foot. And you can roll your head to the right. So that outer right hip is lifted. The weight is on the left outer hip. And letting the right hip crest, the front of the pelvis, rotate and spiral internally towards the direction of the navel and the pubic bone, and the right thigh bone also internally rotating. Good. And then bring the head and the hips back to center. We're going to do that again, bringing the knees to the right, the head to the left. Now this time, you can lift your head up and look at your left thigh. As you start to walk your left foot out to the left, it will probably come off of the mat a little bit, and I want you to try to keep your left knee bent 90 degrees. Now once you find that your center of your thigh bone is in line with the left hip point on that left side, that's as far as you need to walk the left foot out to the left. Now keep that. Internally rotate the left thigh bone in the socket. Let the left hip point spiral in towards the navel. And then once you've found that, reach your left arm up, just like we did earlier when we were holding our beach ball. The palm faces the midline. And then keep reaching that left arm overhead so that the thumb is making contact with the blanket or the floor behind you. And now I want you to just really focus on breathing and lengthening the left side from your rib cage all the way up through your left fingertips, and from your rib cage all the way out through your left knee. And when you breathe in, you can maybe even focus on letting your belly expand all the way down to the lower belly. And really what's happening is your diaphragm's pushing your organs down towards your intestines. We'll take one more breath like that. So this is a way to release the psoas, to unravel it. Kind of like a tight rope that's really raveled up, nice and tight knit. We're unraveling the rope. Okay, let's reach that left arm up and then out, and then walk your left foot back onto the mat and bring the knees back up to that starting position. And just for a moment, straighten both of your legs. And when you straighten both of your legs, notice which side of your hips feel lower to the floor, or which leg feels longer. And for me, it's the left side, because that's the side that we just stretched. We stretched the iliopsoas, which connects your lumbar spine to your inner thigh bone. So it's a hip flexor and a spinal stabilizer. Okay, we're going to bend the knees again. Walk the feet out as wide as the yoga mat, and let the knees go over to the left, the head rolling to the right. Walk your right foot out to the right. You might look up and see that your right knee is bent 90 degrees, and your right thigh bone and knee makes a straight line with your right hip point, right here, straight line. Once you've done that, lower the head. Internally rotate the right thigh bone in the socket. So you're leaning a little more into the left hip as you rotate your right thigh bone. And once you've gotten that, you can take your right arm up to vertical and then overhead, so that the right thumb makes contact with the floor or the blanket behind you. And reach energetically from your right side of your belly and rib cage all the way up through your right fingertips, and from your rib cage all the way out and down through your right thigh bone and knee. So you're just getting a little bit longer on that right side. Sometimes our psoas can really get bunched up, and it can pull on the spine and the pelvis, the thigh bone, and make one side tighter than the other. And that can cause a scoliosis, which is a rotation of the spine with a lateral curvature to the spine. Okay, so we'll take that right arm back up and out and walk your right foot back onto the mat before you bring your legs back to center. And then lengthen both of your legs the length of your mat. And just pause for a moment to feel. Hopefully things are feeling a little more level and even. Feeling like you got some warmth, a little bit of vibration in through the pelvis and the back. That's a good thing. We could probably even stop here and your back would feel better for the rest of the day. But we're going to continue on. So I'm going to have you bend your knees and roll to one side.
And we'll make our way up into a tabletop position. I'm going to grab my blanket to pad my knees. And I'll be facing the opposite direction of where my head was before. So this is what I'll call the top of the mat. Okay, so padding the knees. And we'll come into a tabletop position for a cow and cat pose, which is another way that we can work with co-contracting the spine with spinal articulation. And so the hands are under the shoulders, and if the wrists are hurting, you can bring your hands forward a little bit. The knees are under the hips, about hip distance apart. Now on your inhalation, you're going to slowly lift your tailbone, put a little more curve in your low back, and slowly start to articulate your upper back until your shoulders are down and in towards the spine, your chin is lifted. And then on the exhale, I'd like for you to start to round from your pelvis first. Tailbone lengthens under. And articulating the rounding of the spine here, one vertebra at a time. The last part of your back to move would be your upper back and then your neck and head.
And we'll do that again, inhaling, tailbone lifts, arching your low back, mid back, upper back, neck, lift the chin. Exhale, round the back, starting from the tailbone and working all the way up towards the head. And 3 more times. And last 2 rounds. No additional costs here. You might feel that we're helping the neck as well with these motions, these articulations, and decompressing the neck. Okay. So from here, let's step the right foot forward between the hands and rising up. Right hand on the right thigh. We'll bring the left arm forward and up. Take a breath in. And I'd like for you to rotate your left arm so that your left pinky finger spirals in. And then shift the hips forward just gradually. You'll probably feel some length and stretch through the left hip flexors. I'm just breathing here. So this is not your deepest Anjaneyasana where you would, work on a back bend. We're really just trying to maintain more of a neutral curve through the spine rather than arching back. Good, and then we'll take the hands down to the floor. Let's step the left foot forward and the right foot back and lower the right knee down for the second side of this lunge. Rising up, left hand onto the left thigh. Reach the torso more to vertical. Reach the right arm forward and up. Externally rotate the upper right arm bone so the inner elbow spirals in, the pinky finger spirals in. And just take a deep breath in as you get a little taller and longer. And as you exhale, shift the hips forward just a little bit, just enough to feel some length through the right hip flexors, the belly, side body. Just let the breath be natural and long. Take the hands down to the floor and we'll come into downward facing dog. So both hands onto the floor in tabletop, knees down under the hips to start. Then curl the toes under, lift the knees and the hips up and back for your downward facing dog pose. Pressing through the hands, the 4 corners of the hands, each finger. Lifting the sit bones up, put a bend to the knees about 10 degrees to find a curve in your low back by lifting your tailbone a little bit. And then stretch your outer heels towards the floor. It's okay if your heels don't touch the floor, especially if you're particularly tight through your hamstrings.
Good. Now go ahead and walk the feet forward. You can slide the blanket out of the way as you walk your feet forward to the top of your mat. And we'll come into a halfway lift. I'm going to tuck my shirt in. We'll come into a halfway lift, and you can use blocks underneath your hands if you would like. So in a halfway lift, the torso is more or less parallel to the floor. Now if you're really tight and stiff in your back or your hamstrings, then it'll likely look like this. So if you want to peer over and look, the hamstrings are tight and it pulls on the sit bones and the low back. It rounds the low back just like we did in cat pose on the floor earlier. And for a lot of people that causes more back pain. So to come into halfway lift, we want to have a curve here that moves inwards. So you can unlock your knees, maybe bend them a little more than you think you should. As you do that, think of lifting your tailbone up towards the ceiling, just like you did in cow pose earlier, where you deepened the curve in your low back. And then think of lengthening the crown of your head forward, growing the spine longer, bringing the shoulder blades in towards the spine and down, and looking straight down. Try not to look forward, looking straight down, and bringing the back of the head towards the sky. Good, now press out through the four corners of your feet to activate your legs. And then we'll go ahead and rise up from here. So inhale to rise up, reach the arms out and up into Urdhva Hastasana. And then on an exhale, you can take your hands down. Take your hands to your pelvis here. So what a lot of us will tend to do, rather than being in neutral pelvis, because we don't really know where a neutral pelvis position is, we'll kind of stick our rears out and have too much of a curve in the low back, or we'll tuck the pelvis, so increasing the tension in the glutes and the front of the hips. Okay? And there will also be a lot of tightness through the belly if you're doing that. A big contraction, shoulders round forward, head protrudes forward. So we got to find the fine balance between this action and this action. So we don't want to stand with either of those. We want it to be somewhere in between. So if we can take the hands to the pelvis like this, fingertips in front, thumbs to the low back, and we'll just start to rock the pelvis a little bit. So you can bend your knees so they're not locked. We'll inhale to lift the tailbone kind of away from the floor. Think of it kind of curling up, and exhale to tuck the pelvis under. So these are two extremes, and I want you to feel the two extremes. Do this a few times so that you can find a position of your pelvis when you're standing that's somewhere in between those 2 points. When the pelvis is tucked under like this, then we're tightening the tailbone in the back of the pelvic floor, which increases pain in the back. It also increases pain in the neck and the base of the skull. When we stick our butt out too much like this, you lose tone to that abdominal wall, and that can also cause back pain. It may also overly compress the lumbar vertebra in the opposite direction. So somewhere in between those points, remember, unlock your knees. So you're not tucked under, you're sticking your rear out. It's somewhere in between. Okay, so you're in more of a neutral position. All right. Now let's translate that over into a halfway forward fold again. We'll sweep the arms out and up on an inhale. Exhale to fold. Just notice if you're rounding and tucking your pelvis or if you're sticking your rear out too much, see if you can find a balance somewhere in between those 2 points. Good. So the more that we do things, the more that we look at it with a curious mind, the more we can develop patterns that are healthy. You push down into your feet. Inhale to rise up, reach the arms up. Exhale, bring your hands to your hips. Find that neutral pelvis for yourself, not too much of the sticking your rear out or tucking the pelvis under. And then keep that neutral pelvis and step your right foot back so that you're on the ball of the right foot and the feet are about 2 to 2.5 feet apart. Okay. And we'll just keep the hands on the pelvis for now, just to help you know where your pelvis is. You're not sticking your rear out, you're not tucking your pelvis. Somewhere in between. Eyes are at the horizon. Take a breath in. On your exhale, I'd like for you to bend your left knee and really lift your right heel. And on your inhale, I want you to straighten your left knee and lower your right heel. Pause here for a moment. Without losing your balance, look back at your right leg and foot. Internally rotate your right thigh bone so your right toes point forward. Okay, see if you can keep that. That's going to help to lengthen your psoas even more. Okay, we'll do this again. Inhale. As you exhale, bend your left knee, lift your right heel. You should feel a stretch in the top of the right thigh here. Good. Inhale, lower that right heel straight down. Try not to turn it in. Exhale, bend the left knee, lift the right heel. And let's do that a few more times. And so allow the focus to really be on keeping the right thigh bone internally rotated so that the kneecap is pointing forward and the right toes are pointing forward. Good. Now the next time that you the next time that you bend your right knee, your left knee, next time you bend your left knee, keep your left knee bent, lower your right heel, internally rotate the right thigh bone. Woo. Take your arms up overhead, reach up through the fingertips, breathe here. So if your hip flexors or psoas is tight, maybe from sitting or a lot of running or cycling, both, which seem like opposite ends of the spectrum, can cause a tight psoas, sitting and overuse. Okay, and then from here, let's go ahead and come back to standing upright. Take your hands to your heart center in Anjali Mudra. And just take a moment to notice the right and the left side. Okay, other side. Take your left foot back about 2 to 2.5 feet. So the left heel is lifted. You're internally rotating the left thigh. It's a little bit of a balance here. Take a breath in. Now on your exhale, you're going to bend your right knee. The left heel lifts. On your inhale, you'll lower that left heel and straighten the right knee. And try to keep that internal rotation on the left thigh. Okay? So exhale, bend the right knee, lift the left heel. And inhale, lower the left heel, straighten the right knee. And we're trying to keep the pelvis neutral the whole time. So we're not letting it pelvis tuck under, nor are we sticking the rear out. So as best you can, keeping it pretty neutral. The next time you bend your right knee, keep it bent and slowly lower the left heel to the floor. And then just lifting up and out of the pelvis, reaching the arms up.
delivering the breath into the lungs and the ribs to expand. Feeling that sense of rooting through the feet, reaching and rising up through your fingers, your head. Good, and then come back to standing Tadasana. Step the left foot forward, hands to heart center. Good. So we're going to use one of our blocks to help to lengthen the hip flexors a little bit more and really just decompressing the femur head where it meets the acetabulum of the pelvis and all the muscles that surround that area. So you're going to use one of your yoga blocks and you'll go to a wall, and I'm going to be facing you, so for now, left hand to the wall, and I'm going to go ahead and step the right foot up onto the block, and the block is on its flattest setting, and the pelvis is going to be neutral the whole time, so you don't want your pelvis to be kicking off to the side or one hip point lower or higher than the other. So try to find that that's neutral. Also make sure you're not sticking your bum out or tucking your pelvis under. So keep it neutral, which means you have to keep your core engaged. Okay. Now from here, your leg that's off of the floor, the foot that's off of the floor, that leg, I want you to start to just try to allow the muscles around the pelvis there and the femur to relax, and think of that femur bone just decompressing and lengthening out of the acetabulum of the pelvis. The standing leg over here is strengthening that right hip. And then just very, very slowly, casually start to let your leg that's hanging move a little bit forward and back. Now this is not like, you're getting ready to kick a ball. It's not a big wild movement. You're keeping your pelvis neutral, just letting the leg hang and move a little like a pendulum in a clock, grandfather clock. And it can be really helpful to breathe. And if you focus on your exhalations, exhale, 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 that can also help to release any tight, restricted muscles through the low back and the pelvis. Good. That leg feels so much longer now. I'm going to step off, so go ahead and step off. Feet hip distance apart. Just noticing the difference between the right and the left side. Now I'm still going to face the same direction to do the other side. The only difference is I'm going to slide the block over. And I'm going to place my left foot on the block now. Find the appropriate distance here where my arm isn't too crammed. Pelvis is neutral. And I'm just going to start to let that leg decompress out of the pelvis. Now for me, one leg usually feels more compressed or jammed inside of the pelvis than the other, and it's my right thigh bone. So you might feel a difference as well from right to left. And then just let your legs start to swing forward and back a little bit gently. Nice long deep breaths here. Excellent. And then go ahead and step off of the block. Hopefully both of your legs feel even. You feel a little bit longer, a little taller. Okay. So from here, we'll go back to our mat. And we're just going to set ourselves up so that we're facing the long side of the mat, so that the feet are about
3.5 to 4 feet apart for a standing wide angle forward fold. So press through the outer edges of the feet. And at first, you're just internally rotating the thigh bones. Press through the outer heels. And then reach the arms forward and up and take a breath in. So just as much as you anchor down and out through your feet and the roots of your feet, lift and lengthen up. Good. One more inhale here. Trying to feel length through all sides of the torso. And then as you exhale, you can fold from your hips. And take your hands down to the floor. If you can't reach the floor, you can use your blocks underneath the hips. Underneath the hands, excuse me. And then notice, are you round in your back like you would in a cat's pose? So if you are, bend your knees more than you think you should. So about 15 to 20 degrees, quite a bit, like you're doing a squat. And then lift your tailbone and lengthen your spine. Good. And then start to straighten your legs without losing that curvature that you've created in your low back. And you might even put one of your hands back there to feel, is my low back just right above the pelvis rounded? Is my pelvis tucked? Or is there a nice neutral curve in the low back? And then also trying to keep the spine more neutral all the way up through the top of the head rather than rounding the back here in this position. Good, now walk the blocks over to the right foot and bend the right knee. And straighten the left knee. And lift the tailbone and lengthen the spine. Just lengthening now the left inner thigh and inner hamstrings. And then walk the blocks to center, straighten the legs, lift the tailbone. Don't lock the knees. Keep the tailbone lifting, walk the blocks over towards the left foot. Straighten that right knee as you bend the left knee. Keep that. Feeling some length on the inner right thigh. Good. Walk the blocks back to center. Good. And then hands to the hips with a nice long neutral spine. Inhale to rise up. Exhale to step the feet into hip distance apart into mountain pose. Notice what your pattern is. Did you go back to tucking your pelvis or sticking your rear out? Can you find a pattern that's somewhere in between in the pelvis? Okay, take the feet out wide. So the next posture will go from warrior 2 to extended side angle with a focus on internally rotating the back leg thigh bone. So we'll start by taking the right heel out to internally rotate the right thigh bone. Notice how the hip starts to move in as well. And then pivot onto that left heel to turn the left thigh and the left toes out. Bend the left knee. So the knee is over the heel. Okay. So with this variation of side angle today, this is warrior 2, but we are going to go into side angle. We're going to be focusing on the internal rotation of the back thigh more so than maybe normal. So we'll just go ahead and kind of load that up. Load up that right thigh to internally rotate in your warrior 2. Your arms are out into a T shape. Feeling the strength of your legs here as you lift and lengthen up. Let's reach the arms up alongside the ears here for a moment to get some more length through the torso. Good. Now Now keep the right arm up alongside the ears. Bend the left elbow, hinge from your left hip. Take your left thigh, or your left forearm elbow to your left thigh. Now typically I'd have you rotate your chest up towards the sky, but to work with lengthening the psoas, I'm going to have you rotate your torso towards the left, towards the floor. Keep internally rotating the right thigh bone in the socket and reaching through the right fingertips. So you'll feel a strong pull through the psoas. Just another breath here. And then inhaling to come up, back to warrior two, arms parallel the feet, and step the feet into hip distance apart. Back to mountain pose. And we'll do that on the other side. So take your feet out wide for warrior two. The left heel turns out, set it down. Internally rotate that left thigh. Turn the right foot and thigh out 90 degrees. Come into warrior two, bending the front knee, reaching the arms out into a T shape. And so really highlighting that internal rotation. Also notice, I didn't say this on the first side, notice if your habit of tucking your pelvis forward is happening here or sticking your rear out too much. So kind of find somewhere in between with the pelvis. And rotating that thigh bone internally on the left side can really help to remedy that habit. Reach the arms up alongside the ears just to get some length through the torso. Take a breath in here. Keep the left arm where it is. Bend the right arm and hinge from the right hip, right forearm to right thigh. Now rather than turning the torso to face the sky, which is what I would typically teach, we're going to continue that internal rotation of the left thigh bone to spiral all the way up through the ribs and the arm and the fingertips. And you might even be looking down here. And I like to press through the outer heel of the left foot. Good, and then rising up, warrior two. Straighten the legs, parallel the feet. Arms return and feet return to mountain pose. Good. So after doing all of that good work here, I really feel like I want to keep my back and my hips feeling really good. So we won't do any more standing poses from here, especially not any more asymmetrical standing poses, because I feel like things are in a good place for now. So I'm just going to move my blocks as I stand to the top of the mat. And on an in-breath, we'll sweep the arms out and up here from Tadasana to our upright Tadasana, and then forward fold. And bend your knees as much as you need to here. Good. And then go ahead and walk your feet back to downward dog. Just pushing through the hands. Unlock the knees. Find your neutral pelvis, neutral curve. And press through the outer heels to get the outer heels down. And breathe. A great way to decompress the spinal column.
If you have scoliosis, downward dog can be really nice for that. You lower the knees down.
So we're staying in our tabletop position, and we're going to be working with a strengthener through the front abdominals. So from tabletop position, I'd like for you to bring your right foot back as if you were going into a plank. Curling the right toes under, lifting the right knee. Push out through your hands. And then just barely lift your left knee and foot. And hold this for a few breaths. Breathe. When things get hard, do you hold your breath? I know I do. Exhale, lower the left knee and lower the right knee. Sit back onto your heels. Just take your hands into an interlace. Circle your wrists around a few times in each direction. And then come back to tabletop. Strong arms. Push the floor away from you. Take your left foot back like you're going into plank, curling the toes under. Reach through the crown of your head. And then lift your right knee and right foot just an inch. Breathe. One more breath. On your exhale, lower your right knee. Lower your left knee, sit back onto your heels. Interlace your fingers so that your other pointer finger starts on top. Then thread the fingers through. Circle your wrists around a few times in each direction. I learned this from a friend. She was a client many years ago. She was a gymnast and she taught this to me after doing a lot of handstand and downward dog work. It's a really great way to free up the wrists. So if you're watching this video, I think you know who you are. And I miss you. So let's make our way from tabletop to plank again and then down to our stomach for some spinal work. So tabletop. And you can pick which side that you want to take the foot back first. So I'm going to take my right foot back first and lift the left knee just for a breath there. And then send the left leg back to plank. And I'm unlocking the elbows. Maybe bending the elbows a little bit more. And then lower down onto your knees. And bend your elbows, point your elbows back, and lengthen your head forward as you lower yourself down. All the way down to your belly. Keep your shoulders lifted. All the way down to your belly. Move those blocks out of the way. So we're going to do some spinal articulation. And let's start with upper back spinal articulation. We'll have the hands, palms down under the shoulders so that the fingertips are pointing forward, the toes are pointing back. And finding a sweet spot for the shoulders. You can lift the shoulders a little bit away from the floor like that and bring your forehead down or your nose down to the floor. Push into the floor with your hands, and as you do so, just slowly start to lift your chest. Bring your chin more towards the chest. As you lift the chest, as you lift the rib cage, maybe even the belly, and then exhale to slowly lower down. Keep the shoulders lifted. Inhale to lift up. Now you can put about 1 pound of pressure into your hands, but you don't want your hands to do all of the work. Really focusing on your back, helping you here And if you're not sure if you're doing most of the work with your hands, you can do a little check here by lifting your hands off of the floor for a second and see how much of a lift off you have without using your hands. And so when you place your hands down, you should only be lifting a little bit more and sharing some of the work with the hands. Let's do a couple more like that. Last one. Make pillows with your hands, turn your head to one side, let your legs rest. Now bring your hands, palms down under your shoulders again, your nose tip on the floor. And we're going to work the lower spine. So lift the heads of your arm bones. Keep your chest down. Lift your nose about an inch or two from the floor. That'll engage your upper back and your neck. And then reach your toes of your right foot out, away from the rib cage to lengthen the leg, and then lift the leg up. Keeping that leg straight. Keeping the hip points down. Couple more breaths. So I only have about 1 pound of pressure into my hands. And it's not a cobra back. We're not arching the upper back. Trying to keep the upper back more neutral. Good. Lower the right leg. And just take a moment to relax before you do the other side. And then lift the heads of the arm bones. Lift your nose, reach the crown of the head forward. Lengthen the left toes back, like you're trying to lengthen your leg out of your rib cage, and then up. So this really works the hamstrings, the glutes, and the low back muscles. Just a couple more breaths. And then exhale, lower the left leg down. Good. We'll push yourself up. And back to downward dog. Enjoying your downward dog here. Try not to go into child's pose after doing all that nice lengthening work through the hip flexors and the psoas, because when you flex your hip in deep hip flexion after doing all that good work to lengthen and strengthen, you're just going to send your psoas into a spasm. We don't want to do that. That'll make your back spasm. Good. Lower your knees down. Okay. So the next one that we're going to do is a bound angle pose. And oftentimes, most of the time actually, I'll teach that like with you sitting up on a blanket, but today we're not going to do it that way. I'm actually going to have you sitting with your bum on the floor, and you're going to bring the soles of your feet together, bending the knees so the thighs rotate outwards, and then once you get your feet into a comfortable position, take your hands back behind you, push down into your hands, squeeze your soles of your feet together, and as you push down, try to create more of a curve in your low back by bringing your weight of your pelvis more to the sit bones rather than the tailbone. Can you find that distinction? And so the more you push through your hands and kind of lift your chest up, the more you can start to get that, that levity, if you will, and the positioning of the pelvis. So you're at the front of the sit bones. Now look down and notice, is one thigh higher than the other? So it's really hard for me to tell. I think maybe my right one is a little bit, but some people it's really obvious. So what you're going to do is keep pushing down into your hands, keep lifting the chest. As you inhale, squeeze the feet together, lift the knees so that they're at the same height, and then keep all that work as you slowly lengthen your thigh bones out and down. And just do that a few more times. And you might notice that one leg wants to lower at a faster rate compared to the other. And so the goal is to try to get both of the legs to lift and lower at the same rate. You can think of this like slow moving butterfly wings. They're getting ready to take flight. The last time, I think my hands got tired faster than anything else here. Okay. Awesome. So let's have a block close by. Actually, just have both of them close by just in case. And we're going to finish off with a little bit of outer hip lengthening, an easy twist, and a supported bridge. So lower yourself down, all the way down to your back. If you feel like you need extra support under your head, you can slide a blanket under your head. Okay. So once you're lying down here, you want to find that you're in your neutral pelvis, so you're not flattening the small of your back, you're not overarching, somewhere in between. And we're going to take the right leg, take the outer right ankle to the left thigh, and internally rotate the right thigh bone so that the right knee is kind of angling more towards the left shoulder. And grab hold of the outer right thigh with your left hand and push your right thigh bone into the resistance of the left hand. So there should only be like a little tiny bit of movement here. It's an isometric movement. And this is helping to strengthen and lengthen your outer right hip, your piriformis, your IT band. If you're not getting any sensation here, you can lift your left foot off of the floor, drawing the thighs in closer towards you. If you have a strong core, you can do this. And then internally rotate the left thigh bone, just like we did on the first variation. And press the right thigh bone into the resistance of the left hand. And keep that little bit of resistance as you breathe here. Also try to keep your right side of your pelvis and thigh bone on the floor instead of tipping your pelvis to the left. Good. And then we'll release and switch sides. So you might have your right foot to the floor as you internally rotate the left thigh bone, bringing the left knee towards the right shoulder, right hand to outside of left thigh, create that kind of push-pull resistance with the left femur bone and pelvis level to the floor. Or you can bring the right foot off the floor, drawing the legs in closer, and repeating that same action of bringing the left thigh bone towards the right shoulder, but resisting that action with the right hand, kind of pulling and pushing there. Nice. Really good. And then release. We'll cross the right thigh over the left thigh. So the left foot is on the floor right now. And lift your pelvis up just a little tiny bit
and start to twist your pelvis towards the right, so you're on your outer left hip now. Okay, and the outer left hip is on the floor, and then take a twist of your hips over to the left. And if you want to use one of your blocks just as a stopper, if you can't quite get your legs to the floor, all the way to the floor, use a block to support you. And then twist your upper body to the right and turn your head to the right. Trying to get the right shoulder to the floor. And I'm going to use my left hand just to lengthen the right side of the torso. Just kind of lengthening the pelvis down, pulling the pelvis and the thigh down away from the right shoulder. I can feel it's a little tight there. It's still a little tight yet, so I'm going to lift my right arm up and alongside my right ear just to get a little more length through that outer right hip. And I can tell that my outer right hip is pretty tight still, and today I've done a lot of strengthening work on the outer right hip, so I know it's not because I haven't been working it. So sometimes tightness is a result of weakness. So I'll probably get the foam roller out later and foam roll the outer right hip. That usually does the trick. Okay, so let's come out of that. You can release the right arm down if you had lifted it. Come out of the twist and cross the legs. And then cross your left thigh on top of the right thigh. Just going to pick the hips up a little bit and roll to the outer right hip. And then twist hips over to the right. And you can use a block as a stopper if you need it. Left shoulder to the floor. Twisting the upper torso to the left. Turning the head to the left. Now I'm not feeling that the left side is restricted like the right side was, so I'm not gonna iron the side out with the hand or press the thigh down. But if you feel that you're tighter on that side and you want to just give a little bit of manual tacking down with the right hand, you can certainly do that. Or you might decide to lift that left arm up alongside the ear to get a little more length through the side body. And so as we practice over time, we get to really know ourselves, we get to know our body, we get to know the imbalances that we have, maybe from right to left. And you might learn that you need to pay more attention on one side than the other, or do more repetitions, or hold it longer on one side compared to the other. It's a process for sure, and just think of this practice as a way for us to be curious, to really pay attention, to develop focus and mindfulness, and to learn how to shift and change easily without overreacting. So take that left arm back out to the side, come out of the twist, hips to center, uncrossing the legs. And we'll take a supported bridge here, lifting the hips. I'm actually going to get rid of the blanket so my neck isn't compressed, so I lowered my hips first, remove the blanket, lift the hips, and then slide a block underneath the pelvis so that the sacrum is right smack dab in the center of that block. And the hips are heavy onto the sacrum, onto the block. Nice long, deep breaths. Now you may or may not want to explore this next variation I'm going to take my right leg into extension, the right leg straight so that the right heel is on the floor. And the left knee is still bent, left foot on the floor. Just taking a few breaths here. Allowing the right thigh bone to be internally rotated. So the knee points up, toes point up. And I might even, actually I think I'm going to point my right toes a little bit, get a little bit more length through that front line. And then take the right arm overhead. Just take a couple more breaths like this. Release the right arm back down, slide the right foot into supported bridge. You might stay here in supported bridge with both feet to the floor like they are, or you can lengthen your left leg so the heel is on the floor. Internally rotate the left thigh, point the left toes, and breathe here. Make sure your pelvis is still level and rooted to the block. And then option of reaching the left arm overhead. And reaching from fingertips to toes. And then I'm just going to go ahead and lengthen my right leg as well and reach my right arm overhead. So a full body length and stretch. Reaching through the toes, reaching through the fingers. Pelvis is equally rooted. And just enjoying the breath for a few more. Come out, we're going to slide the feet in one at a time, back to supported bridge, bring the arms down, lift the hips up, lower the spine down one vertebra at a time. And just resting here in neutral pelvis, neutral spine. We'll set ourselves up for final relaxation. Let's take a short relaxation on your back. Pad your head, cover yourself. Maybe put a bolster or blanket under your legs. So make sure that you are comfortable. And we'll just take a 5-minute Shavasana, final relaxation, just to let the practice simmer and percolate. Making sure that you take this time in quiet without any agenda, without having to focus on what's next. It's just your time now to surrender without having anything to do. Surrendering your effort with each exhale. Each exhale, letting go of any tension or any clenching, any holding that you feel in the body or the mind. You might even scan your body just to notice, where are you holding? Where are you efforting? Notice it and invite yourself to let go. Let go. Surrendering into ease and
quietude. Now slowly and gently bring your awareness back to your body, back to your breath, feeling a reawakening, the breath revitalizing and nourishing you. Bringing some movement back to the body by wiggling the fingers and toes. Moving the hands and feet, the arms and legs. And bending the knees, rolling to the right side. Use your strong hands and arms to push yourself up into a seat. Grabbing a cushion to sit onto, a blanket to sit onto. Grounding down through the seat. Lifting up through the crown of the head. Joining the hands to the heart center, Anjali Mudra. Each time we come to our mat to practice, we are strengthening our muscle of concentration and mindfulness and awareness. We're allowing ourselves to see ourselves as we are. Our mat can be thought of like a mirror, where we can honestly see ourselves and learn how to be okay with that. And with each practice, we are shedding old skin and re-emerging into our new self, a transformation, if you will. As we become more resilient in nature, more resilient physically and spiritually, of heart, of mind, and turning into our own metaphorical lotus flower from the muck, from the mire. I want to thank you for practicing with me today. I hope that you'll join me again. Namaste.